Welcome back to Rapture Tales. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and get ready for another story you won't forget. Let's dive back to the story. The hospital corridor was too quiet for a place that was supposed to save lives. 8-year-old Sebastian Crowe sat on a narrow metal chair outside the intensive care unit, his small fingers gripping the edge of the seat as if holding on to something solid might keep everything else from collapsing. The fluorescent lights hummed faintly above him, and every few seconds a nurse passed by with careful steps and a face trained not to reveal outcomes. Across the hallway, his mother, Margaret Crowe, stood perfectly upright, her posture so controlled it looked almost unnatural. She had always been elegant, but that day her stillness felt like armor. Inside the room beyond the glass doors lay Jonathan Crowe, Sebastian's father, connected to machines that breathed and beeped and tried to measure time that was already slipping away. No one explained much to Sebastian. Adults leaned down and spoke gently, using phrases like doing everything we can, which even at his age he knew meant hope was thin. When the doctor finally emerged, his expression confirmed what words soon followed. Margaret listened, nodded once, and thanked him. She did not break. She did not scream. She simply walked to her son, knelt before him, and said in a steady voice that his father had finished his work in this world. From that moment forward, she said, it would be the two of them. Sebastian did not cry immediately. Instead, he watched her eyes and saw something deeper than grief, determination. Life changed not with noise, but with adjustment. Within months, the comfortable house they had lived in was sold to settle debts Jonathan had accumulated while trying to expand a business that never fully recovered. Margaret refused assistance from extended relatives who offered support layered with judgment. She moved them into a modest apartment above a tailor's shop where the scent of fabric dye lingered constantly in the air. During the day she worked as an accountant for a mid-sized firm. At night she managed bookkeeping for a small restaurant chain. Sleep became a luxury she rarely allowed herself, yet she never missed reviewing Sebastian's homework or preparing his meals. Instead of toys, she gave him logic puzzles. Instead of bedtime fairy tales, she read him biographies of entrepreneurs and inventors. She believed that understanding how people built and lost empires would teach him to protect his own future. Sebastian absorbed everything. By 13 he was repairing outdated laptops for neighbors. By 15 he built simple software programs for local businesses struggling with inventory management. His mind leaned naturally toward systems, how they functioned, how they failed, and how human error often destroyed what intelligence built. Margaret never praised him excessively. She simply reminded him that brilliance without discernment was dangerous. Trust slowly, she would say while pouring tea in their narrow kitchen. Success attracts attention, and attention attracts both loyalty and greed. University expanded Sebastian's world but did not change his discipline. While classmates chased social freedom, he spent nights refining algorithms and studying financial infrastructure. During his second year, he proposed a predictive market analysis tool to a professor who dismissed it as overly ambitious. Sebastian quietly built it anyway, coding in long, uninterrupted stretches fueled by determination. When he demonstrated the finished system at a technology conference, a logistics company licensed it immediately. The payment he received surpassed anything he had imagined, yet the first thing he did was place the check on the kitchen table before his mother. She studied it calmly before sliding it back. Money is earned, she said, but security is maintained. That distinction stayed with him. He registered Crowe Systems in a rented co-working space barely large enough for 3 desks. He hired carefully, choosing competence over charisma. Growth was deliberate and strategic. Within 5 years, his company specialized in secure financial management systems for corporations seeking discretion. He declined several buyout offers that would have made him wealthier overnight but stripped him of control. Stability mattered more than speed. By 32, Sebastian Crowe was a billionaire CEO known more for reliability than publicity. His estate overlooked a quiet stretch of coastline, large but not ostentatious, protected by subtle security measures rather than obvious extravagance. Margaret now lived in a guest wing designed for comfort, though she insisted on tending her own garden every morning. Despite success, Sebastian maintained structure, weekly financial reviews, monthly strategy sessions, and Sunday dinners with his mother without fail. His closest professional ally was Leonard Hayes, his COO and university friend, whose charm complemented Sebastian's reserved nature. Leonard managed operations with smooth efficiency and unwavering loyalty, or so it appeared. The company's head of finance, Victor Rowan, had joined 2 years earlier, bringing impressive credentials and quiet competence. Sebastian valued both men deeply, believing loyalty grew naturally from shared ambition. Natalie Pierce entered his life during a charity art gala he had attended reluctantly. She stood before an abstract painting, critiquing it with bold honesty rather than flattery. Instead of recognizing him immediately as the influential CEO many whispered about, she debated artistic meaning with him as though he was simply another guest. That lack of obvious calculation intrigued him. Natalie worked in event consultancy, came from a respected upper-class family, and moved with polished confidence. Over time, dinners turned into weekend outings, conversations stretched late into evenings, and her presence introduced spontaneity into his otherwise structured life. She seemed warm, attentive, and emotionally intuitive. When he proposed during a private seaside dinner a year later, she accepted with tears glistening convincingly in her eyes. Preparations for their wedding transformed the estate into a hive of planners, decorators, and designers. Margaret welcomed Natalie graciously but observed quietly. There was something about Natalie's perfection, her timing, her tone, that felt almost rehearsed. Still, she dismissed her unease as overprotectiveness. As the wedding approached, activity intensified. Guest lists expanded to include influential investors, dignitaries, and business partners. Natalie's parents, Philip and Caroline Pierce, became frequent visitors, often discussing media coverage and prestige. Sebastian attributed it to excitement. Leonard coordinated logistics enthusiastically, while Victor ensured financial transfers related to the event were secure. The day before the ceremony arrived wrapped in sunlight and tension. Margaret moved through the mansion, ensuring last-minute arrangements were in order. In a quieter corridor near the guest wing, she paused when she heard Natalie's voice drifting from behind a partially closed lounge door. The tone was not the affectionate one she used with Sebastian. It was colder, sharper. Margaret stood still as fragments of the conversation reached her ears, references to transferring company funds, manipulating an investor named Harold Whittaker, and ensuring Sebastian would take the fall legally. The words were precise, deliberate, and chilling. Margaret's heartbeat pounded, but she did not panic. Instead, she quietly activated the recording feature on her phone and captured every word. That evening, when she confronted Sebastian in his study, she did so gently. She asked him to listen before reacting. As the recording played, the color drained from his face. Natalie's voice was unmistakable. She spoke about wiping company accounts, defrauding $1 million, and framing him through digital evidence that would suggest embezzlement. Worse, she mentioned collaborators within the company, trusted allies who had already planted a worm in the servers. The betrayal struck deeper than anger. It was disbelief that fractured him. The woman he intended to marry, the partner he trusted with his future, had planned his destruction. Sebastian did not rage. He became silent, the same silence he learned as a child. That night, instead of rehearsing vows, he contacted his lawyer Arthur Kensington and security chief Derek Shaw. Quiet measures began immediately. The following morning, guests gathered unaware of the storm brewing beneath the celebration. Instead of proceeding with the ceremony, Sebastian requested a private meeting with Natalie in the Grand Hall. His calm demeanor unsettled her. When he played the recording, her expression shifted briefly before composure returned. She attempted denial, then anger, then manipulation. It failed. Federal investigator agent Laura Bennett, already alerted by Arthur, entered alongside authorities who had been monitoring suspicious transactions connected to Harold Whittaker's investment accounts. Natalie was arrested before stunned staff and family members, her parents protesting loudly as she was escorted away. The wedding ended before it began. Days later, Natalie's family filed a lawsuit claiming defamation and breach of trust, demanding $1 million in damages. The courtroom became a spectacle. Sebastian remained composed while their attorney attempted to paint him as unstable and vindictive. But when Arthur presented the recording in full and Agent Bennett detailed financial irregularities already under investigation, the narrative collapsed. The judge dismissed the case entirely, citing clear evidence of criminal intent. Public opinion shifted instantly. Sebastian was vindicated, but not at peace. Shortly after the trial, Sebastian received an encrypted message through internal company channels. "You stopped the bride. You won't stop the system." Alarmed, he summoned Victor Rowan and Leonard Hayes, demanding a full cybersecurity sweep. IT specialist Ryan Cole uncovered a sophisticated worm embedded in the financial servers, one that could authorize a $1 million transfer disguised as legitimate restructuring. Logs revealed access credentials tied to executive clearance. Suspicion turned inward. Under pressure, Victor faltered first, confessing involvement but insisting he was recruited by Leonard. The deeper betrayal hit harder than Natalie's deception. Leonard, his friend since university, admitted he orchestrated the plan, leveraging Natalie as distraction. Years of perceived loyalty had masked resentment. He believed he deserved control, not subordination. The transfer was scheduled to finalize within minutes. Leonard revealed the password only after realizing there was no escape, a cruel phrase mocking Sebastian's late father's failed business venture. With seconds remaining, Sebastian entered the override command and halted the transfer. Federal authorities took Leonard and Victor into custody. Crowe's systems survived intact, but Sebastian's trust in people lay fractured. Months later, during a cybersecurity ethics symposium he attended reluctantly, Sebastian met Elena Brooks, a data integrity consultant known for rebuilding breached systems. She spoke not with charm but with clarity, emphasizing transparency over image. Their conversations were thoughtful, measured, unforced. Margaret observed quietly once more, but this time without unease. Trust grew slowly, deliberately. Years later, Sebastian married Elena in a private ceremony far from spectacle. They named their daughter Margaret in honor of the woman whose vigilance had saved everything. Margaret Crowe lived long enough to see her son's peace secured before passing quietly in her sleep, content that her promise outside a hospital room decades earlier had been fulfilled. The weeks after the arrests were strangely quiet, as though the world had stepped back to watch what Sebastian Crowe would do next. News outlets lost interest once the scandal stopped producing spectacle. Investors stabilized once the company's accounts proved untouched, and the mansion that had once prepared for a wedding now felt too large for ordinary days. Sebastian returned to work with disciplined focus, yet routine could not restore what betrayal had removed. Trust no longer came naturally. Every conversation carried an invisible evaluation. His assistant Emily Dawson noticed he reviewed documents twice as long as before and scheduled fewer social meetings. Margaret Crowe pretended not to observe the change, but she adjusted small things, fresh tea appearing beside him during late nights, quiet company in the study without questions. The company itself required healing. Employees whispered about the conspiracy, wondering how high it reached. Sebastian addressed them in smaller private meetings rather than grand announcements, answering concerns directly. He reassured them salaries, benefits, and positions were secure. Stability returned slowly, not through speeches but consistent actions. Yet internally he wrestled with a deeper question. If the people closest to him could fabricate loyalty for years, what defined genuine connection? To secure the future, Sebastian authorized a complete restructuring of internal oversight. Cybersecurity specialist Ryan Cole expanded his team, installing monitoring layers designed to detect not just external intrusion but behavioral anomalies within executive access. Derek Shaw, the security chief, coordinated with federal authorities to audit every financial process connected to the attempted transfer. The investigation revealed the sophistication of Leonard's plan. Small test transfers months earlier, disguised as routine corrections, had measured response times and vulnerabilities. The precision unsettled Sebastian more than the betrayal itself. It meant patience, not impulse, had driven the scheme. During one late review session, he asked Ryan whether any system could truly guarantee safety. Ryan answered honestly, systems reduce risk, never eliminate it. People remained the unpredictable element. The statement lingered in Sebastian's mind long after the meeting ended. Months later he accepted an invitation he would normally decline, a cybersecurity ethics symposium hosted by international regulators. He attended not out of interest in networking, but curiosity about prevention. There he met Elena Brooks, a consultant specializing in rebuilding compromised infrastructures. Their first conversation began with disagreement. She criticized companies that relied on secrecy instead of transparency after breaches. Sebastian countered that reputation required discretion. Rather than retreat, she explained calmly that accountability built stronger trust than controlled narratives. Her perspective held no flattery, no hidden agenda, only professional conviction. Over several sessions they continued debating frameworks, occasionally sharing coffee between lectures. She never asked about his personal life or wealth, and when she eventually recognized his identity, she treated it as irrelevant context rather than advantage. The simplicity felt unfamiliar yet comfortable. Their acquaintance developed gradually. Instead of elaborate dates, they met for walks through quiet city parks, discussing systems, ethics, and ordinary topics neither had time for in their careers. Elena enjoyed restoring antique clocks, fascinated by mechanisms designed centuries earlier still functioning with care. Sebastian found the hobby symbolic, precision maintained through patience. He introduced her to Margaret during a small dinner at the estate. Margaret observed carefully as always, but this time her questions were softer. Elena answered honestly even when unsure, never shaping responses for approval. Afterward, Margaret told Sebastian only that peace felt easier in Elena's presence. He understood immediately what she meant. Meanwhile, the legal aftermath continued. Trials concluded with Leonard Hayes and Victor Rowan convicted of multiple financial crimes. Natalie Pierce accepted a plea agreement related to fraud conspiracy. The outcomes brought closure legally but not emotionally. Sebastian attended none of the hearings beyond necessary testimony. He preferred distance over reliving events. Instead, he focused on strengthening corporate culture, introducing mentorship programs, rotating leadership responsibilities, and transparency policies ensuring no single executive held unchecked authority. Employees gradually shifted from anxiety to loyalty, appreciating leadership that had survived corruption without collapsing. Years passed, marked less by dramatic events and more by steady living. Sebastian and Elena married privately beside the coastline where he once planned a different future. Only close friends and Margaret attended. No press, no spectacle, just vows spoken into ocean wind. Marriage did not transform his life overnight. Rather, it softened it. Evenings included conversations not about risk assessments but books, travel plans, and Elena's clock restorations ticking gently through the house. When their daughter was born, they named her Margaret in honor of the woman whose vigilance preserved everything. Watching his mother hold the child, Sebastian saw a rare, unguarded emotion, contentment without restraint. Margaret Crowe lived several more peaceful years, tending her garden and teaching her granddaughter patience through small rituals like planting seeds and waiting for growth. One morning she did not wake. The stillness in her room felt similar to the hospital corridor decades earlier, yet different, no urgency, no unfinished promises. Sebastian stood beside her knowing she had fulfilled every responsibility she ever carried. At her memorial he spoke briefly, not about wealth or success, but about awareness, how love sometimes protects through observation rather than interference. Afterward, life continued, as she would have wanted. Crowe systems expanded internationally under stronger ethical frameworks. Elena's consulting work influenced global security standards. And each evening, when Sebastian locked his office, he paused for a moment of gratitude, not for surviving betrayal, but for learning discernment. The day before his wedding once threatened to end his life as he knew it. Instead, because one person listened carefully, it redirected him toward a future built not on appearances but truth. That's all for today. Like, subscribe, and see you in the next episode. Stay tuned.